You're listening to the Women's Wealth Canada podcast with Glory Gray. Be sure to download and subscribe using your favorite podcast app and like us on Facebook.
Are you going through a life transition and need to find a wealth advisor to manage your investments? You don't have to feel discouraged wondering how to find the right one. Grab my free guide, 12 Smart Questions to Ask When Interviewing a Wealth Advisor. This guide gives you all the questions and why you should ask them. Just go to glorygray.com, pop in your email address, and we'll send it right to your inbox. Hi everyone, I'm Glory Gray and welcome to the Women's Wealth Canada podcast. If you're a business owner, you've dedicated a lot of time and money building something you can be proud of. Maybe you're thinking about your legacy now. The question is your family prepared for the legacy they will receive, or are you leaving them a mess? My guest today is estate planner and family business advisor Sandy Pollack. Sandy is the author of Don't Leave a Mess, How to Disaster-Proof Your Family Legacy. It's available in audiobook as well as print and ebook. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. In the book, Sandy draws on her experience advocating for family business enterprises. She explains that building wealth and managing wealth are not the same thing. We're in the middle of one of the largest generational wealth transfers in history. To build generational wealth intentionally, there needs to be more clarity around our family conversations. If you own a family business, you're going to love this. So join me today as I talk with Sandy about leaving a legacy, not a mess. So our listeners may not know this, and you and I were recently talking about this, Sandy, but only 15% of financial advisors in Canada are women, and we are woefully underrepresented. And it was a challenge for me to start my firm, and I love to talk to other female founders of financial advisory firms because they get it. So tell me about your firm. What do you do, and whom do you serve?
So my firm, which is called Trimaran Advisory Group, serves, we have a two-tier market. Well, not tiered, but it's very much divided. 75% of our clients are family-owned businesses, usually multiple generations, and we try to help them make wise choices to protect, control, and transition what they have worked so hard to build. Then there's this small little sliver, which is 25%, which are self-employed professionals like doctors, lawyers, accountants, particularly in the physician area. And we believe that we try to help them care for their wealth as well as they care for their patients. And the reason why that sliver is there is because my husband is a physician. And my practice started in Montreal, and then we moved to Ottawa. And it was an accountant who had referred me to a number of his clients. And that's how I got my start with doctors. When I moved to Ottawa, I made an intentional effort not to work with doctors, but my husband insisted because he said, they need you. You cannot just ignore, because they need help. They need guidance. And so I kept it that way. But really where my heart of hearts are with family businesses, family business enterprises, because they have so much complexity that no one is really sitting beside them at the planning table to discuss issues that are beyond balance sheets, that are beyond numbers and profits. And it has to do more with the family side of wealth, the interpersonal and communication side that a lot of people don't understand. And there's family dynamics. And I think that as a woman, being a mother myself, that there are family dynamics at play. Every family has a system, and it's understanding that system so that when it comes time to make a decision with clarity and confidence, you actually understand the playing field, the various components, which are the human side, the financial side, the leadership side, and they're able to make decisions with discernment so that they don't hurt other people or destroy relationships. And that's not easy to do. So that's pretty much our practice. And we love our business families because they are the engine of any strong economy. And I think Canada owes a lot of its success to the grit and courage of family business enterprise. And I feel very proud to be alongside to help them connect those dots.
Do you get a chance to sit down with multiple generations at one time?
Yes, I do. And that's
Yeah.
probably the most fulfilling part of the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
First, individually, because we have a process. When we work with family business enterprise, which is a discovery process where we sit down and we meet with each family member one-on-one, and sometimes we're even meeting with a CFO or a CEO to really understand the landscape of the true family business enterprise. And then when you bring them together in a room and you facilitate a family meeting, it is magic. It's magical because all of a sudden people are actually present. And that's very hard to do when you're running a business. And that's really hard when you're at the family table and you're about to rush off to a soccer pitch or a baseball field or a business meeting. And I think that when families take the time to actually have a family meeting to discuss whether it's the business of family or the family business, it creates better communication. It starts to build trust. And we all have different, you can see a car accident, Lori, and if you ask 3 people what happened, they're going to give you a different version. Well, think about that in multi-generational families. It's the same thing. It's not that one person is right or one person is wrong. It's understanding that everyone has a different and a very unique lens. And the more that we can understand that, the better we can help the family or the families make decisions that will transcend generations, that will be reflective of their values, their family values. And it also will provide guidance for those other generations so that they can make decisions with clarity, confidence, and discernment.
And it must be really exciting to see the children and the grandchildren get that aha moment. They may not have had a chance to talk to the business owner about their big why they do what they do. Do you find it exciting to see those children get that aha moment about, oh, this is the future and this is why they did it? This is the past, this is the future, and this is my connection with it. Do you find that too?
Yes and no.
Okay, interesting.
Is because initially when someone starts a business, it's because they think that they can do something better than someone else. They can provide a service or a product. Their also initial goal is to put food on the table, right? Feed their family.
Fair enough.
And then it starts to grow. And it isn't so much why they started the business, although it's quite fascinating, but it's the stories that led along that journey of success. And there were many bumps and there were many failures. And I think that what really tends to bind and tie families together are the stories. It's not the wealth. It's those moments of doubt. It's those moments of failure where maybe they had to choose, they had to make a choice to shut a business down or sell a business and start anew. And what factors contributed to that very difficult and anguishing decision, and how did they have the tenacity to move forward? And when you've got a third generation that's feeling that they're under this shadow of success and wealth, and they're trying to find their way, it actually reassures them that it's okay to fail. And, we have 3 of our own children, and I always say, fail forward. And they look at me and I said, because if you don't try something, you'll learn more from things that don't work than from things that work. And you will find your way. And I think that there is a misunderstanding of what failure is. And failure is learning. Failure is learning. And I think we have to embrace that idea of taking risks and falling forward and failing forward to really learn and grow. And when you have a third generation with a first generation business, family enterprise, and they hear these stories, it humanizes the wealth. It humanizes the business, because this person or persons can be an icon in the community, and you're just you, and you didn't ask to be born into this. And there is not enough empathy and understanding of the multi-generational challenges as well as opportunities to really give them an opportunity to flourish as a human being.
Amazing. I love that. Let's talk about women in families of wealth or wives of business owners. How do they become part of the conversation? When should they insist on having a quote seat at the table?
Yesterday? How's yesterday? How about when the owner decided to mortgage his home and she had to co-sign to borrow money from the bank to start the business? I think that I deal with a lot of family businesses, and the majority of them are founded by men, but they will not step foot in our office unless I have his partner present, his life partner. And the reason, I don't know if you watched the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but there's that scene where they said, he may be the head, but I'm the neck. And I laugh and I bring that into our meetings, because women play such an important role, whether it's as the CEO, the chief emotional officer, right? To keep the glue that holds the family together, and families can be sometimes messy. That's normal. As well as being so integral so that if their partner is working those extra hours, that individual is picking up the pieces and to make sure that the family stays together. However, we can't forget that the financial part, and when you're thinking of financial planning, Glory, it's a few components, right? There's investment, there's risk, there is legal, and there is tax. Like, those are the four. Financial planning is not difficult, but when you deep dive into those four areas, it can seem a little daunting. And unless you start with having both partners, both spouses at the table, so that they can unpack as to what's important to them about money, what money means to them, how they grew up with or without it. Did their parents talk about it? A lot of families do not talk about money. They rather give their children the talk about the birds and the bees than talk about money, which I do not understand.
Very true. Very true.
And I think that the woman sitting at the table has a clearer perspective on the family dynamics, which can impact your planning, on looking at the softer aspects of money. And so instead of looking at it from a tax planning, income splitting lens, and you have a lot of people that say, oh, look at this great strategy. Here, I've got another strategy for you. And the men tend to just jump at strategies to save taxes. Sometimes your kids are not tax deductions, right? And are you going to give your 8-year-old the car keys to your Lamborghini? Well, quite often you'll have these trusts and all these legal types of strategies that push wealth to children that aren't prepared, right? And they're not prepared because the families have not taken the time to provide a basis of financial fluency. So where do women come into play? Well, first of all, they need to be prepared, and they need to be supported on their journey to understand. And so I would say that just as the founder of a business begins to learn more about tax planning or estate planning or investing, as the business continues to grow, it is so important that his spouse or her spouse be at the table as well to learn and acquire that as they journey through life together. Instead of being invited to sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, which is a disaster waiting to happen. And that is why you have so many families broken because of wealth, when it's unnecessary. It's because they haven't invited everyone in. And strong families make strong businesses, not the other way around.
I've had some business owners, and I'm sure you have too, who perhaps they might be early on in their journey, and you're helping them to set up. And they might be two men, and they have their wives there for the perhaps signing of the corporate papers. And they kind of look at each other and realize, if one of us passes, this is your next new partner, is the spouse sitting next to you. Is that something that she wants to do? Have you even thought about it? Are you often dealing with that where they're not thinking about, this partner is actually either going to be my partner or we need to do something to fix it.
That is a great question, Glory. And I think where you have to start is paint me a picture. And I usually ask partners to paint me a picture as to what happens if your partner dies. Do you want to be partners with their wives? Right? And 9.9 times out of 10, they say no. So then we'll recommend things like a shareholder agreement. And they'll say, well, what is that? And I'll say, well, the shareholder agreement is right now you guys are chummy together, but there might be a point where you don't get along. And a shareholder agreement just helps protect your rights, but also clearly notes what your obligations and what expectations are. So not assumptions, but expectations. And so that if you die, would you like to know that there's enough money in the business so that you will be able to buy those shares? And that way the spouse gets a check instead of the headaches. And, oh, well, how does that work, Sandy? And what else do we consider? And so by having the questions or being curious, I would say that's the big thing, is to ask them, well, what about risk and mitigating risk? What about if you disagree? How are you going to manage that? And putting those out on the table before those forms are signed, right? So that everybody's in consensus and the spouses understand too, right? They'll sign an agreement and they haven't even discussed it with their spouse. I think that will alleviate a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of litigation, a lot of lawyers' fees, and a lot of money that could be used much better, right? For financial security, independence, and opportunity. So yes, that does happen. And we talk about it. And that goes back to those 4 pillars of there being legal, tax, risk, and investment. And when we do planning for our clients, particularly our business families, and we look at those 4 pillars, when we notice that there are gaps, for example, the number of wills that I've read that just have, that don't really reflect what they want for their families. And so we'll point certain things out. The number of very successful business people that don't have wills or powers of attorney, that might be a recommendation as well. So a biggie that I've seen is where they say, okay, when my child's 21, they get all the money. And again, who you are at 21 is not the same person you are at 31.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness, exactly. But wouldn't it be nice to know that you can actually organize your affairs in a way that if your children in their 20s made lots of mistakes, learned from them and had a second chance at 30 or maybe 35. And more often we see that, no one's actually talked to them about that, or the idea of who you choose as an executor. And what's the role of an executor? An executor is one of the most thankless jobs you could ever ask for. It's got a list that's a mile long. You've got beneficiaries that are waiting for their money, and you have all the liability and responsibility to make sure that this is okayed with Revenue Canada. You need your clearance certificate before you can hand out anything to anyone. And you have to have good communication skills. You have to be very organized. You have to understand tax. You have to be able to work with other advisors. And a lot of people, when they write their wills, don't know that. And it's the same thing for trustees. What does it take to be a good trustee? It's the same thing when you're looking at guardians. Okay, I appoint my sister to be a guardian. Have you ever thought of adding a letter to that as to how you would like your children brought up? What's important? Is it education? Is it making sure that they get a job? It's just, okay, you're my guardian and that's that. And so I have to think about what were they thinking, because these are children now that I'm responsible for. So I find it very intriguing when you actually start having those conversations about the what ifs, that people go, oh my God, I've never thought of that. And, you have people that think, well, if I don't get my will done, I won't die. I mean, there are people that have those serious beliefs. And when we're sitting in a meeting, I will never say to them, I guarantee you this will happen in terms of you'll get 5% on your money or your estate tax will be this. I can guarantee you. All these financial plans, are based on a lot of assumptions that are guaranteed not to happen. That's when I tell them that. But I will guarantee them with 100% certainty that they will die. I don't know when, but they will. And once we get that off the table, so either you do nothing, which creates a lot of angst when you've just told me family was important to you, and this may destroy your family financially, personally, emotionally, or you get this done to the best of your ability, but also you share the contents of your wills with the executor, with the trustee. The number of people that become surprise executors because they didn't even know that they were chosen, it astounds me. It astounds me. And so I think that that's just one element of true planning that really needs to be taken with a little more time, a little more caution, and a little more introspection. And unless you have an advisor that's curious to ask the questions, you don't know what you don't know.
That's been an interesting item where many of my clients will have a will, and they're, as you say, they haven't told their children, they haven't shared what's in the will. And there's some interesting dynamics on why that is. What's been your experience for why they might not have shared the contents of their will with their children or whoever the executor is?
First one is fear. They think that if they share the contents of their wills, their children will be just, lazy. They're going to be expecting money when maybe they won't. They're uncertain as to how to even discuss this topic with them. And I think that there's an appropriate age. I mean, you're not going to tell your 10-year-old, by the way, here are the contents of my will, right? That definitely is not appropriate. I think what's important is initially when you have a family, and even if you don't have a family, you have a business, to speak to your executor, to share your will and why you have organized it in that way. And then as you journey through life, there's going to be times where you explain what's in there. You don't have to actually give them the will if you don't think they're ready, but you can certainly talk about it. And we had this situation with our children where we decided to have a lawyer as a co-executor and 2 of our 3 children as co-executors. And we explained to them why. Now we have 3 children. So one of our children said, well, why am I not an executor? Is that because I was always the one who, was the troubling one and who always broke the rules? And we were able to have a meeting, and I looked at our daughter straight in the eye and I said, no, it's because you live in England and now you're planning to move to these States. And in order to be an executor and be compliant with the tax laws, we need to have someone who resides in Canada. And until you have decided to have permanent residency in Canada, from a tax point of view, we can't appoint you. The pressure in the room went way down, and the answer was, oh, that makes total sense. Versus waiting until we both walked out of life a little too early, and them saying, why did mom and dad not appoint me? So having those conversations or saying, listen, we set it up in a way that we've added a third party to help because it's a complex estate. There's trusts, there's, companies involved. And this person specializes in tax and legal, so he will be alongside you to help you. The other thing we've done is we've put things in buckets, and these buckets are called trusts. And these trusts are there so that you each have your own little bucket if we go, and you can manage it in any way that you want. And all those kinds of topics, it didn't have to deal with numbers at this point in time, but at least they understood why. And they also understood that we'd worked really hard for what we have, and we hope to enjoy it. But if there's anything left over, we will be able to make sure that it is distributed in a way that is fair, that had a lot of thought put into it, but most importantly, that reflected our values. And our values were family harmony, living life to the best, but not spending, I would say, frivolously, and being grounded. And I think that has been, an example of sharing contents of your will. And also that they would have 3 separate buckets so that they wouldn't be glued together, which may be an opportunity for more family conflict. And we didn't have to give them the exact figures. We didn't have to tell them what the value of the estate is, because we said we might end up spending it all. But it was just that at this particular moment, if something happened to us, that was how we organized our affairs. And we told them where the wills were located, where the papers were located, so that they weren't rummaging through the house trying to figure out, who's our lawyer, where are the wills, where's this, at a time when you're consumed with grief. So that's just one element of planning. And I think that, the other side, which is taxes and, making sure that what you have is not forced to be sold because of capital gains taxes or estate taxes, is another element. But I think that that is something that is more on a strategy based, and it's how do you harmonize, what we call the values, vision, and goals of the individual with the strategies, tactics, and tools that may have to align with those. And if you rush towards strategies and you rush towards tactics, I can assure you that that creates more conflict and more confusion, because that's leading your financial and planning decisions instead of having your values. And again, this goes back to, Glory, where's the role of the woman? Where's the role of that partner? And I think that giving them an opportunity to unpack, giving them an opportunity to share their money journey, their money script, will give them confidence to make decisions give them the confidence to make the right decisions with discernment and clarity. And I think that we cannot overlook that we all have money scripts based on how we grew up, how our parents talked or did not talk about money. And once we realize that some money scripts are healthy and some are not, how do we improve the ones that aren't so healthy? And I think that a good advisor can be a coach to help initiate those conversations and help you gain clarity so that you can say, oh, that is why I always do that. That's always why we wash the milk bags, because my mother did that, but we don't even know what we do with it, right? I was like, yeah, that would make sense. And all of a sudden you're connecting certain actions and certain decisions, that some of them are great and some of them are not so great. So let's modify, based on your goals, not on the advisor's goals, because the advisor is really there to walk alongside you, not to pull you, not to push you, but to really walk alongside you and help you so that you can make those right decisions for yourself and your family.
I'm going to go ahead and end with that, because I don't think we can make it any more perfect. Thank you so much for being on the Women's Wealth Canada podcast today, Sandy.
It has been a true delight, Gloria, and I want to thank you for inviting me. To all your women listeners out there, I will just say one additional thing, which is it's never too late to begin the journey of learning. And there are many good advisors like yourself that are there to help them. So thank you. And I wish you continued success in your practice and in helping your clients.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
You're welcome.
Now, I have some good news to tell you. Our office is accepting new clients this year. So if you live in Canada and want to get serious about getting your financial house in order, go to glorygray.com and get in touch with me. If this podcast helped you, please subscribe and leave us a positive review and tell others about it so we can help them too. I'm Glory Gray, your personal trainer for financial fitness, telling you to take charge of your finances, plan for the future, but most of all, enjoy today. And bye for now.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. It is not an offer to sell or buy, or an endorsement, recommendation, or sponsorship of any entity or security cited. Mutual funds offered through Portfolio Strategies Corporation. Other products and services provided through Glory Gray Wealth Solutions.